Hi, everyone. I'm Leslyn Keith with Lipedema Simplified. I'm president of the board with the Lipedema Project. And here again, talking to you about our symposium coming up and talking to our wonderful speakers that are going to be presenting at the symposium. Today, I'm here with Amy Shanahan. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
She is going to be one of our speakers. And Amy, you live where in the United States?
I'm in Salem, Massachusetts, actually.
Okay, over on the East
On
Coast,
the East
not
Coast, yes.
not too far from Catherine. So
hmm
you're over in the Northeast.
Oh,
And
great.
how is the weather there today?
It's been gray. We finally got our fall. It's been
Okay.
gray, cool, and cloudy, and the city is gearing up for Halloween, as you can imagine. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we're ready.
Here in California, it's been a particularly hot summer, and usually in the 90s and hundreds. I don't know what that is in Celsius. Sorry for
Oh,
people who are
yeah.
listening to this in other countries, but it's hot.
Ah,
And we had a thunderstorm last night. And so finally, we're starting to feel a little bit like fall, and it got down to a chilly 69 degrees.
that would be that was kind of chilly. We've our summers have gotten hotter and hotter. It's not,
Yeah.
nothing like that, but for
Mhm.
New England, there's been too many heat waves. It's not right. There shouldn't be that many.
And
So,
now, Amy, you have lymphedema,
yes.
and I'm wondering, with those, the change in weather and the barometric pressure changes,
hmm
but also when it gets hot and muggy in Salem, have you
Yeah.
found that that really impacts your lymphedema?
It can, yeah, it can, depending upon if I'm outdoors a lot, the temperature of the house. If you're, it really can. I try very hard to, and I like
Hmm.
being outdoors if it's not oppressive.
Hmm.
But sometimes I don't notice it at the time, but I'll notice it afterwards that
Yes.
I'm swelling, that things are tighter, and it's like, oh, you got to kind of,
Yes.
or even just with the change sometimes, it's the same sort of thing. So it's a drag, because I actually used to like the summer in my
Yes.
youth. Those
Yes.
days are not there anymore, unfortunately. So
Yeah, things change as we get older.
yeah, very much.
Definitely, what used to be easy to manage is not so
Yeah.
anymore. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I lived at the beach in my 20s. I mean, lived at
yeah.
the beach. Even
Hmm.
though I was a person of considerable size, I didn't think anything of it. I could get up and down off the sand easily. I was a nanny. I ran after little kids,
Hmm.
and now I'm like, the beach is like an excursion that I have to even, plot and plan. And
Hmm.
it's not the fun, and it's not what it used to be. That's for sure.
So, Amy, you've had to battle with managing your weight
hmm
as well as after the birth of your lovely Rose.
Yes.
She after that you've developed lymphedema.
Right.
So you're working with those two conditions, having
Right.
to work on that. And at the symposium, you're actually going to be talking about that. You're on one of our patient panels
Yes.
to talk about your story and your how you've learned to manage your lipedema. But I think one of the best things about your story is that you found a community that deals with lymphedema, but also deals with the way that you've chosen to manage your conditions by using a ketogenic diet.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that community that you have.
Um, the lymphedema is such an isolating condition, beyond very different from being overweight or weight management, because that was something I had all my life. I have friends who are larger who did not have this particular condition. So suddenly, even the people I was comfortable around I couldn't relate to them at all. They still had the mobility and the things that I just lost in it, what felt like a matter of days. All of a sudden, like one day, after my daughter was born, and I couldn't say it was the pregnancy anymore, or the C-section or the birth. It was suddenly something's different.
Mhm.
So it became more and more, and here I was with this small baby, not able to really take part as much as I wanted to in mothers groups and, going on walks and things. And so it was all of a sudden a whole new thing. Um, and it, and no diagnosis for 3 years, not really knowing, and just everyone thinking, well, it's she had a baby. That's, she put on more weight. So when I started to research And even getting the diagnosis didn't change anything except to give it a name, because I wasn't given any real treatment except for managing immediate conditions like infections or cellulitis, but not to like, how can I address this for the rest of my life?
So, yeah, so they figured out what it was.
Right.
Thank goodness they figured
Right.
out what it was, but
There
they
was a
had
name.
no idea that there was actually treatment available.
Right. Right. And I didn't either. I never thought, well, if I maybe, other than, well, sure, if you lose weight, it might become more manageable. But losing weight I had lost a lot of weight in my 30s pretty easily. Not easy, but now I look at it and that was easy because I had mobility, because I could do aerobic exercise, because I could literally jump and dance and do things in my 30s that I could not do anymore. The same workout tapes I did 20 years before, literally I couldn't do without holding onto a chair and trying to maintain my balance, and the constant fluctuating of fluid in my body. So I'd be losing weight, but the scale wasn't reflecting it. So it was just, and no one could explain that to me, that what was happening. So when I finally in 2017 started to really just Google nutrition, lymphedema, and trying to just figure something out, was how I found the ketogenic diet. That this whole concept of that grains were inflammatory, that sugar was inflammatory, which you kind of knew in a academic sort of way, but not very specific to this condition. That just sort of struck me as true, and that's where I started to find community with people. First, just other people who had very serious other physical conditions, metabolic disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, all kinds of other things that they were managing. And then finding a group where people were specifically using keto for lymphedema. And that brought it to a whole nother level of other people are doing this and changing their lives with it. So
right.
That's sort of how
and I thought it was pretty amazing how you were able to find support in other Facebook groups and a community of people that were trying to manage their weight using a ketogenic diet, but you still felt like you weren't totally supported and part of the group, because no one had lymphedema. They didn't know what lymphedema was. And so this is what really made the difference.
They didn't know what they had, because since now that I've been in some of these other groups, every March I post my story specific on World Lymphedema Day, and people come and say, oh, I have this. Like they didn't talk about it, or someone said, my mother has this. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize. And so it's kind of interesting. They have it and they don't know what they have, which is so sad about this condition, that they just think it's overweight. They just think, and that's part of it, but it's not the whole story. And
and that's so remarkable, because another lymphatic condition, lipedema, which is that abnormal deposition of fat on the lower body and pain and all kinds of stuff. Same thing. They think that they're just overweight. They do not know that they have a condition. And so when you post this to those other groups, you are raising awareness, Amy, and reaching people who otherwise had no idea. And they just thought, okay, I don't know why this is not working for me like it does everyone else. But it must be me. It must be my fault. So this is a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thanks.
Giving and receiving support by being in these groups.
It makes me feel better too. I mean, and I struggle. I mean, I'm not at my goal. It's a constant, progressive thing, of changing. You have good days, you have bad days. There's so many variables, but it's nice to know that you are like, someone will say something in a group, because sometimes I feel like all I'm doing is posting recipes and food, and things that I've tried, but that actually means a lot to people, more so than I realize, because one of the easier pieces of keto for me was that I always cooked, and I was someone who was sort of conscious about food because of my daughter. So I didn't do a lot of processed foods. I didn't do a lot of eating out. So I didn't have that trouble. But there are people who really do struggle with that. So when I'm posting these meals and people say, someone said to me just last week, you really keep me, and I sometimes feel like, oh my God, I'm posting too much. And somebody said, you really keep me going with all these different meals and all these different ideas and everything I do is pretty clean, because I've been lucky to be part of clean groups. And it meant so much. I didn't know idea, because sometimes, yes, the group that I'm in for keto and lymphedema is kind of a quiet group. There's not a lot of activity, but people are reading it. They are looking at it, whether or not they're
Yes.
responding. And then that's just
Yes.
nice to know. It's really nice to get that feedback when you do.
Yes,
So,
exactly. And that is, I think that's key, because that's when people do post things, they're saying, I just don't know what to, you have a food list, but I don't know what to
right.
eat. I don't know what to
Exactly.
make.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me some ideas. And
Right.
so, and for that one person who has posted that,
Mhm.
there's 50 others
Oh,
who are thinking
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And just thinking, it just must be me. I can't think of what to make
Right.
when I have
Right.
this great food list. And some people really do need that help. And
Yeah.
so, posting things as you do with those recipes, and then showing that beautiful finished product. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes people, oh, that does look appetizing, and
Right.
this is keto.
Yeah.
I can do this.
People think it's about
Yeah,
they either think two things. One, it's
yeah.
completely overindulgent in just nothing but fat and that's all it is, or they think it's utter deprivation and there's never a dessert and there's never a vegetable, there's never any, there's just so much misconception out there. So when I can correct some of those misconceptions, I feel better, or that it's super expensive or it's just not attainable. And it can be if you go at it that way, but there's ways to
Hmm.
make it, because we do this on a budget here, and
Hmm.
so
Right.
I get it. It's awful, especially when there's people who have worse situations than me and worse medical conditions and struggling with healthcare and health bills and medical debt. It's terrible. It's
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
terrible. It's a vicious cycle for most people. So
Sure. I mean, the most common reason for going bankrupt in the United States is
sure,
because of healthcare
absolutely,
and health
absolutely,
costs, stuff like
right,
that. So,
right,
so, and it's great that you are able to show that this is not an expensive way of eating.
no,
People think that, I mean, it's been suggested by some people, some proponents of keto, that you have to get grass-fed and finished,
yeah, yeah,
wild caught,
yeah,
organic,
organic,
free
everything, yeah,
range,
yeah,
and that can be expensive. But
hmm
you really, just by cutting the carbs
yeah,
substantially, you're already doing a bunch for your health. Even if
absolutely,
you can't get those expensive
right,
versions of
right,
the foods,
right.
stay with ground round. Don't go for the
That's
ribeye steak.
yep.
It can be done on a
That's
budget, and you will be doing
yeah.
something good for your health.
That's absolutely what I tell people all the time. And, I said some of the things I said that are better for us are the cheaper things like
Hmm.
dark meat chicken and ground beef and tuna fish packed in oil and eggs. I mean, you can really make a lot you can make a lot out of a little. You really can. And,
Hmm.
if you get
Yes.
into a place where you can start baking, the stuff will last you a long time if you decide you're going to have something with almond flour. There's ways to be judicious with it and make it work. And,
Hmm.
that it doesn't have to be a life of deprivation, not at
Right.
all,
Yeah.
not at all.
So when you first went to this way of eating,
Hmm
what was your favorite go-to meal that you really felt like, this is, I have arrived. I'm eating something that I absolutely love, and it's going to help me lose weight.
I think because I actually, even when I was losing weight traditionally, I think I knew, and there was a period right after I got out of the hospital with my first infection that I talked to a nutritionist, and we just talked about more protein, not that it was no carb, but more protein than carb. And
Hmm.
I knew all along, like, that I felt better if I ate a protein based dish as opposed to, even though I'm Italian through and through, I was not a
Hmm.
pasta person because I was hungry after I ate pasta. So even
Right.
before keto, I was like, I'm not satisfied by this.
That's
This
not
is
working
just,
for
it's
me.
not working. I'm hungry in an
Hmm.
hour. Whereas if
Hmm.
I ate meat and a vegetable, I felt better. So I
Hmm.
think it was finding out that that was really what was going to change things. I found, the difference in my energy level because I was drinking like green smoothies that were all veg, all and a little bit
Yes.
of fruit, all this stuff,
Yes.
and I was starving before lunch
Yes.
and not
Yes.
focused. And
Yes.
when I started eating these protein-based breakfasts and not having brain fog and not feeling like I was going to fall asleep at my computer, and not being hungry, sometimes not even wanting lunch because
Hmm.
it was just this, realizing, and that's where fasting came into in a natural way, not that I felt like I had to force anything. So I don't know if I had a go-to meal. I think, I think I did a lot of bunless burgers. That was a big thing. I did a
Hmm.
lot of like
Hmm.
dark meat chicken. Learned how to make wings. Like wings are a big. And when I go out, I'm always looking for restaurants that serve wings that aren't breaded, which is getting easier and easier to do.
Yes.
You know, I'm finding it so much easier to do. I'm thinking those were probably the first kinds of meals that I was really, and I didn't buy a thing. I didn't plan a thing. I didn't do a shopping thing. I still have a husband and daughter who pretty much eat traditionally, except they eat, I would say they eat 90% of what I eat, you know, they're old enough that they can do their own thing.
Yes,
but I remember I decided, I had been reading it for a while, I was going to go one day without bread. I was going to go one day without milk. I was actually a big milk drinker. And just to see if I could do it. And then one day became 2, became 3. And I was like, oh, I think I got something going here. You know?
Yeah. And that was actually a good way of thinking about it, Amy, that you took little bites.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It wasn't, you didn't go into it saying, this is the rest of my life,
exactly.
which that can be overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And so you took those little bites, and every time you were successful, oh, well, then let's go another day. Let's go another day.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Well done.
Well
done.
And then I started to, and it was slow coming, but I did start to feel better. You know, even though I wasn't losing significant amounts of weight, I was feeling, you know, and it was trying to figure it out and how much fat and how much, and I was at a place back then, this 4 years ago, that was a little more limiting about protein, and now I'm not afraid of protein anymore. So so that's been different, doing a little bit of a higher protein keto. So you got to find your way, and there's not, you can't get sucked into, there's only one way to do this either. You have to feel like you can learn and adjust. I did always keep things clean. I was definitely more drawn. I'm part of Christy Sullivan's group. And at first I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. This is so strict. Who could live like this? But I found myself going to that group, and now I'm actually a moderator in her group. But I always found myself going back to that group when I wanted to be accountable, when I really wanted good advice, when I really wanted to know, is this a good product? And I knew that that's where I was getting the best information about really clean stuff, and learning to really read labels and what did that mean. And so that's one thing that kind of kept consistent.
Tell everybody the name of your Facebook group that you do for lymphedema, people who want to do keto and they have lymphedema.
It's called Keto and Fasting for Lymphedema. And I found this group at the end of 2018. And I don't know how I found it. I don't know what I was Googling that came up. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so it was a group of people who all had this problem. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is a group specific to this problem.
Yes.
So I was really excited about that. And I've been part of it ever since, and I moderate in that group now too.
Yeah.
But that was really something. And I think that I learned more about fasting. I learned more about what that does for the lymphatic system. I learned a lot more things, and that was because some of the groups I belong to, everyone has a different philosophy about fasting, but this was a place where I could learn more, and found really good results with it, and I'm still finding my way with that whole lifestyle as well. But it was really, and I met a lot of people who had worse conditions than me, who were bedridden, who are really, really struggling, but doing it, but finding their way too. And I thought, wow, anybody could do this if the people who are struggling with this can. So it's kind of humbling, in a lot of ways when you and I'm in a part of the country that has, we struggle with healthcare and bills, but I'm in a part of the country that has better healthcare or better facilities than other people do. I'm very sad when I read about people that are sent away from the hospitals with bad infections, and not, because I've never been turned away from a hospital. I've gone to the hospital and been admitted when I didn't expect to be admitted. I expected to just be, seen quickly. And I'm like, it's a problem. It's a problem across the country for people who are struggling with this and not being taken care of. It's scary. It's really scary.
So for everybody listening today, we hope that you'll join us at the Innovative Solutions for Lipedema and Lymphedema conference that's happening on October 22, 23, and 24. I think, Amy, you are speaking on the first day.
Yes. Yep.
On Friday, the 22nd.
Yep.
So be sure, and we have a link there for you to check out for more information and to register. You're going to see people just like Amy that are going to be telling their stories. There's going to be clinicians and physicians and all kinds of people who are going to be presenting about all kinds of innovative solutions, including keto, for lipedema and lymphedema. And so we hope you can join us there. Amy, thank you so much for agreeing to be a participant in our symposium, for helping to moderate that wonderful Facebook group, and also for being here today with our Facebook Live. It was wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you very much. This has kind of been a really good thing for me too, to kind of tell this story, because I've had a couple of a rough week, so it's been kind of nice to tell this story and put it in perspective and say, oh, I am doing okay.
Yeah,
so
good.
You don't always get to do that, so you don't always get that
Yeah.
chance. So it's been a little bit of a gift for me. So thank you very much for including me in this.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Okay.
And I will see everybody next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.